All right, welcome to the BFR podcast presented by Sports Mockery. My name's Dave. You can follow me on Twitter at Dave_BFR. I'm joined by someone a little different today. Ficky is out. No worries, though. We have Jacob Infante. He is the NFL draft guru for the Bears over at Windy City Gridiron. Jacob, man, we appreciate you hopping in, joining the show. How you doing? It's been a tough week.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you can say that again. I mean, I'm glad to be here, glad to be talking about a game that's not what we saw last week against the Packers. But yeah, no, I mean, I'm glad to be able to come on the show, and I'm excited for what's going to come this Sunday.
I know. I'm hoping it's a little bit different, and we'll kind of get into what we believe and what we think about is going to happen just against the Bucs and what we want to see. We do have a great guest. He is over at the Pewter Report, I believe. He'll probably correct me if I'm wrong. I'll go ahead and bring him in. His name's Joshua, and we'll bring him on now. Let's see here. All right, Josh, can you hear us, man?
I can hear you just fine. How's it going, guys?
Wow.
Hey, man, it's going good. This is Jacob. I'm going to go ahead and switch it so we have it correct here. He is joining us. Typically, I have my co-host. His name's Ficky. He's not here, so you're stuck with Jacob and I. But we're very excited to have you on, man. First of all, tell us a little bit about yourself. I was going to try and say your last name, and I know you cover the Bucs, but how did you get into it all?
Yeah, so last name's Queipo. It's a lot easier than it looks.
All right.
So I write for pewterreport.com, so we cover the Bucs exclusively here in the Tampa Bay area. And I kind of fell into it. I was a longtime reader of Pewter Report, just followed them, just grew up in Tampa, so I was naturally a Bucs fan. And a few years ago, I noticed they didn't really have anybody on this team who really had a great firm grasp of the CBA and the salary cap. And because I'm a giant nerd, I've read the CBA and had a pretty decent knowledge of it. So at the time, if you guys are familiar with John Ledyard, he was with Pewter Report. And so I dropped into his DMs. I said, hey, I kind of write just for myself. Here's some samples. He enjoyed it, brought me onto the team. And ever since then, it's just kind of been a roller coaster. Been doing it for about 1.5 years now.
Okay, wonderful. I mean, so are you familiar? Do you know who Brad is? He does a lot of
Spielberger.
Yeah, Brad. Yeah,
we talk a little bit on Twitter. Yeah.
But I was going to say you guys would be best friends, to be honest.
Yep.
Awesome, man. Well, hey, so Bears versus Bucs. You guys obviously had maybe a surprising win. I don't know how some would call it. For me, the Vikings. I think there was going to be kind of a step back. I didn't think it would be week 1, week 2, 0-2. But the Bears versus the Bucs Vikings was interesting. Now you got the Bears coming to town. First of all, just kind of set the tone. What is it like in Tampa with Baker? Are you guys confident heading into week 2? Or are you still riding that high from the first win of the season?
Yeah, I think most Bucs fans are extremely confident. They did not take well to a lot of the national predictions in terms of them being in the Caleb Williams kind of lottery that they may win. I think some predictions had them at like 3 wins. The Bucs are still a very talented roster following the departure of Tom Brady, but very top heavy, if you will. Depth is not their strong suit. They're rostering 13 rookies this year, including, I want to say, 7 undrafted free agents. Wow. So if there's injuries, which they are dealing with some, there was some news on the injury front here today with a couple of starting defensive players who are going to be out for Sunday's game, specifically in their secondary. The drop-off is considerable and very quick. So if the injury bug doesn't hit the Bucs this year, I think in a down NFC South, you could see them competing for the division. If it's a war of attrition, I don't think they win it. And it's already started. They lost 2 offensive starters for the year before they played game 1, right? So Ryan Jensen, their all-pro center, gone for basically the 2nd year in a row. And they lost Russell Gage, their wide receiver 3. Now here headed into week 2, you lose Carlton Davis, their premier outside corner. And then their first-round draft pick, Elijah Cansey, who really flashed in about 12 snaps before re-aggravating a calf injury. He's also going to be out for this game. And then their rookie nickel corner, Christian Izien, he's been going through the concussion protocol. He is questionable for Sunday as well. So it's already kind of started, and that could lead to problems.
Wow. I mean, that's perfect setup. I was actually going to go into the injuries. I know there was a couple key ones you already mentioned. Jacob, do you have any thoughts on that or any questions for Josh, man?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I know you mentioned the with Ryan Jensen going down. I'm curious, that offensive line, it seems like Tristan Wirfs, obviously, even though he's switching sides to left tackle, you know what he is. He's one of the best in the game.
Yep.
By all accounts, he did well against Minnesota.
Yep.
And the rest of that offensive line is really young. I mean, you're looking at, Cody Mock. You're looking at Luke Goedeke.
Gedeke.
Yeah. I should know how to pronounce this because that's always my issue with the draft stuff is I watch the guys and I never watch like with sound on or with commentary. So it's always just total guess. But yeah, for that offensive line, what are your thoughts about the state of that group? Because Chicago's defensive line got better compared to last year, but that's barely saying anything. It's a really low bar. It's overall one of the weaker groups in the league. How confident are you in Tampa's offensive line?
So I think they had a really impressive showing week one, especially against a Brian Flores defense, right, which was blitzing quite a bit. Flores, I want to say, sent 5 or more rushers 55% of the time. He also dropped 8, like over 15 snaps. So it was all or nothing to try and confuse Baker. And in pass protection, the offensive line held up really well. Baker Mayfield was only pressured on 9 of his 38 dropbacks per PFF. So really, really sound protection. The spots that were in considerable question was probably the right side of the line. You had rookie Cody Mauch making his first career regular season start. He held up really well. It's been a very Tristan Wirfs-like story arc with Mauch, because Wirfs coming out of Iowa, great run blocker. What's his pass pro going to look like? And then from day one, he was just an insane pass protector. Mauch has had a very similar arc here in the preseason and now through week one. The run blocking's been a little bit more of an up and down roller coaster. I think that's more due to the scheme switch that they've done. And Robert Hainsey, the center next to him, has been really iffy and kind of throws off the guards around him. Gedeke was making a switch. He was a right tackle at Central Michigan. The Bucs drafted him to be their left guard. He was an abject failure last year, got benched in week 6. They've switched him back out to right tackle this year. And game one as a pass protector, solid. Run blocker, still some issues there. But it was a very encouraging start from where most people thought that side of the line would be. And I think that against Chicago's line, they're set up for some success.
Yeah. I mean, you guys, I was looking at the stats. This is from PFF also. You guys had 16 total pressures on Kirk Cousins. You sacked him only twice, but you had 7 hurries, 7 quarterback hits. It was a pretty good performance. So the Bears obviously have been struggling. They let up pressure against Green Bay, who has a very good front as well. What are your expectations for the Bucs line? Do you think they're going to eat as well? Is that going to be continual?
Not as much as Green Bay. I don't think the talent there, especially at the edge, we don't have Rashawn Gary on the Bucs, right? Like it's just he's not there. And Wyatt and Clark, they definitely, they crushed it on the interior. Vita Vea will move people. Like that's just who he is. He had a down year last year. He looked to be in great conditioning. Last week, he chased down a screen from about like 30 yards. And at 350 pounds, to watch him run down a running back from behind, it's just like, who does that? How is that physically possible? He makes it possible. With Kancey out, you're looking at a rotation next to him of Logan Hall, who was the Bucs' top pick last year. He was first pick of the second round. He really hasn't been great since coming into the NFL. And then you have Will Golston, you have Mike Green, who's an undrafted free agent, and then Greg Gaines, who came over from the Rams in the offseason. Not exactly a murderer's row in terms of pass rush, although they are going to get after it in the run game. And this is last year, Bowles tried to switch things up. He went to a lot more too high looks, tried to get home with 4. The run defense was a little bit softer than it had been in years past. And at least through week 1 this year, you see them back to being an elite run defense, lots of blitzes, single high stuff. I mean, this was a vintage Bowles game last week. And if it carries over against Chicago, I know they're going to try and force Justin Fields to beat them with his arm.
Okay, and that kind of leads me to Justin Fields. Obviously, you guys have Baker, a little bit different story, no more Tom Brady. But what are your thoughts on Justin Fields? And then also, what is Tampa Bay like? Is the defense? Have you guys talked about Justin at all? Do you fear him at all, or kind of what's the vibe heading into this week with him at quarterback?
For Fields, for me, I think there's always got to be a healthy sense of fear because of what he can do with his legs. And if there is one giant asterisk on a Todd Bowles defense in his time in Tampa Bay, it's been tackling. Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, their edge rusher, he would have had 9 or 10 sacks last year, except he doesn't know how to wrap anybody up and get them to the ground, right? Devin White, for all of his talent, one of his big issues is he'll miss a ton of tackles. And with Carlton Davis being out, the Bucs are going to rely on Zion McCollum on the outside. He was a 5th-round pick last year. All the athletic traits in the world. DJ Moore has got to be screaming up and down, like, put me on him and just let me work my magic, because he had McCollum in a blender last year in Carolina. I was there at that game, and it was ridiculous how many times McCollum was just like, it's like he was on a merry-go-round going, where'd he go? Where'd he go? Where'd he go? So if the Bucs can tackle like they did in week 1, I think that minimizes Fields' impact. If they revert back to typical Bucs tackling, Fields could go off for 120 on the ground and then hit them for some big shot plays.
It'll be interesting. I was looking at it. You guys had 1 missed tackle last week, which is, I was like, what? A little shocked here. And Devin White I think he had one of the best grades for PFF as a defensive player, 90.7, which I'm a huge fan of Devin White.
Yeah, possibly the best game of his career. He is much maligned in the Tampa Bay area.
It looked good.
Yeah, I've been one of his biggest critics myself. He was everywhere. Him and Levante at the line of scrimmage were absolutely insane. And then the big thing with White has always been his ability in coverage, and he was fantastic. He really was not getting tripped up on his hook zones. Yeah,
and he's only 25, right? And he was a first-round pick, 5th?
He's playing on his 5th-year option. Yep.
Okay. Interesting. So, Jacob, speaking of like running, Justin Fields last week, he had, I think, 2 QB design runs. And so it wasn't really a, focal point in the offense, which is a surprise to a lot of us. It's been a huge talk in Chicago. It's kind of been a crazy week, you could say. There's been a lot to discuss. Jacob, you think that Justin and maybe Luke Getsy are going to go back to that? What do you think as far as the scheme for Tampa?
So I feel like you have to look at last week's game against Green Bay and just say, all right, do the exact opposite of that. Because, which, quite frankly, I mean, you have Justin Fields, you have one of, if not the most athletic quarterbacks in the NFL. And it's not even just designed runs. It's moving the pocket, getting him on bootlegs, rollouts. Run the threat of the read option or the RPO. It wasn't there. And I feel like that's something that Luke Getsy, it's in his arsenal. We saw it last year with what Chicago did on offense, but he didn't pull it out this week or last week. So I'm curious from that perspective if Getsy's going to utilize that. I get in a vacuum wanting to go heavier on flats and screens and stuff, especially with when you have DJ Moore, you have Darnell Mooney, very good yak receivers. But I think that activating Equinemius St. Brown is going to be important for them because he's their best blocking wide receiver. Right. Chase Claypool is not going to be that guy.
He got driven back, 5 yards on that screen to Mooney?
Yeah, by a dude
he was like 5'8".
Oh man, I'm the same size as that guy. So, but yeah, no, I actually had a quick question for you, Josh. So I was talking with your guy Matt Matera with Pewter Report. I was on with him the other day, and he asked me this question. So I'm going to ask it to you, but in reverse. So,
sure.
If the Bears beat the Buccaneers, what would have gone wrong for Tampa Bay?
The Bears would have been able to isolate McCollum, both in coverage and with some stretch runs, because he's worked on his run defense. It was a little bit better in the preseason. I still don't trust it, but he got exposed because he'll bite too far on the inside and he won't seal the corner. And He got beat on some outside runs a bunch. So I think that's one. The Bucs don't get the turnover luck that they did against Minnesota, because that was very crucial to their victory there. And then Baker goes YOLO. I think those are the three keys.
Yeah.
So Baker, what is your guys' thoughts on him? Obviously, he's probably just going to be around for maybe a year or two, bridge gap quarterback. Do you think you guys can really do damage this year with Baker, or is it more just, kind of get through this year and then look at the quarterback class coming up?
For Todd Bowles, I think he thinks he can win with him, and he needs to, because I think Bowles' job could be on the line this year, depending on how they do. I think general manager Jason Light is in a much safer spot with the Glazer family, and he can look a little bit more long-term.
Okay.
With Baker, I think the Bucs have done the best they can to recreate 2020, right? In terms of, he's got the playmakers, he's got the system that he was most successful in, right? And he's healthy. That's the big thing. We haven't really seen a healthy Baker Mayfield with a full off season in a system that he's comfortable with since he won a playoff game against the Steelers in 2020. So they've tried to recreate that. New offensive coordinator Dave Canales does come from the McVay tree. It is that, mid-zone play action bootleg type of offense that I think bodes well for Baker, because it gets him throwing mostly to the sidelines, couple, very simple reads. It doesn't ask him to go over the middle, where he's had trouble throughout his career a whole lot. And with that, again, the NFC South is, they're 3-1 right now, but by the end of the season, that winning percentage is going to change. And it's probably one of the weaker divisions. And I think that they can compete, again, injury luck working with them.
Right. Awesome. Well, thanks, Josh, man. So let's go ahead and get to this. As far as the game itself, Bears, you're at Tampa, home, it's going to be hot, more than likely, as far as just the weather. What is your overall prediction for Sunday's game against the Bears?
So I know I'm on a Bears podcast, so I feel terrible doing this.
No,
but
we want it real.
I do foresee the Bucs winning in a fairly convincing fashion.
Okay.
I would call it like 30-14.
Yeah. So, 30-14.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. If it's 30-14, I think there might be some changes. Honestly, it's that bad right now after week 1. That's what happens when you lose to the Packers too.
Well, from what I've seen from Bears Twitterverse, they want the changes already. They're looking for a change at head coach. Is that not right?
Yeah, and he's gonna be. Definitely. It's not good. Obviously, losing to Jordan Love, his first real start, you could say, the Kansas City game, for me, it didn't really count,
right.
But coming into this one, it was one that you couldn't lose the way they did. I think losing in a close fashion would have been more tolerable, easier to swallow. Obviously getting blown out, getting 38 dropped on you at home, no energy. There's been that Chase Claypool debacle, that compilation of, blocking, and you throw in all the quotes this year or this week as well. It was very muddy as far as kind of almost players throwing other players under the bus, coaching staff not having answers. It was not great. And the Bears are actually, they have, let's see here. They are 2.5 point underdogs in week 2 against the Bucs, which I don't know. I thought it'd be a little higher, but again. So for me, the over and under is set at 41 points, Josh. I want to end you with this. Do you think, you said 30-14? So you're thinking it's going over?
Yep, not by much.
And that's because of the Bucs. Yeah. Awesome, man. Awesome. Jacob, you have anything else for Josh before we let him go, man?
I don't, honestly. I think this has been great. Just to be able to hear from a Tampa perspective. It's always insightful because we have these these Bears colored glasses.
Yep.
And so to be able to hear from an outside perspective what the opinion is of the Bears, and also what the opinion is of the team that our favorite team is going to be facing. It's always, refreshing. And I think you provided some really good insights. So I really appreciate you coming on, man.
Hey, thanks guys. It's been a blast being on.
All right, Josh, you take care, man. Enjoy the weekend. And like I said, hopefully the game's a little bit closer than you predicted, but we'll see.
I would love some close fourth quarter football.
I love it, Josh. Well, you take care, man.
See you.
All right. So appreciate Josh coming on again. It's always a pleasure just kind of having a fresh perspective, kind of like what Jacob said, just having kind of removing because I mean, honestly, I feel a little bit better than 30-14. I think the Bears might even have a chance this week, which again, those Bears goggles are on. And I think it's more of just hope at this point. But Jacob, like I said, I appreciate you first of all hopping on and just co-hosting with me. I know you've been on the show before. We appreciate it. We're gonna go ahead and jump right into just kind of our keys for the game. Obviously, we heard from the Bucs side what they kind of have to do to kind of maybe obviously prevent an upset if you're looking at the money line. But what are your keys for this week? For the Bears just heading into Tampa, obviously to do everything opposite of last week. But what does that truly mean?
So I think that part of that comes down to, like I mentioned earlier, I think the ability to get Justin Fields on the move, get some more moving pockets, not only easier for him and utilizes his athleticism, but it makes it easier on the offensive line. And I think that especially along the interior, the more you can naturally get your guys on the move, the more likely you are to displace a guy like Vita Vea, which is a really tough thing to do. Yeah. But the more you move those pockets, the less isolated that situation is going to be, the more likely you're going to have double teams that are, a bit more natural and don't have a massive gap elsewhere. A couple other things, I'd like to see the Bears utilize a bit more 12 personnel. So, the one running back, 2 tight ends. I think that obviously Robert Tonyan being hurt played a role in his not playing a whole lot, but I want to see him a little bit more Mercedes Lewis. I think that if you have one of the best blocking tight ends in the NFL, you should use him. And they only used him, I think it was 5 offensive snaps.
Not much, man.
It was single digits. I know that for sure. And I think that especially with offensive line struggles, having a piece like that is very valuable for chip blocks, for, inline stuff against edge rushers and linebackers. And offensively, I think the last one I have is attack the middle of the field. And
with DJ Moore.
Yeah. With DJ Moore, ideally. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was confusing. I could go on about only targeting DJ Moore twice, but it is what it is. It's in the past. They got to change that. But I think from a middle of the field perspective, it gives a wide receiver a bit more of an opportunity to make plays in space. Just because, and I understand you get them outside, hypothetically, you get more space, but with the screens and the flats that the Bears ran, those were like bunched formations. Everyone's just crammed so that there's not as much space as it seemed like there would be for a screen. And they're not super spread out. The edge rushers are relatively close. And if your offensive linemen don't do the job, you've got edge rushers, and the only line of defense is your wide receivers. So, rambling aside.
No, you're good, man.
I think the middle of the field that's my own personal offensive philosophy as someone who sits and watches TV and doesn't coach or anything. But yeah, I think offense, those are the big keys. Defense, I'll try and keep it shorter, but a bit more blitzing. The 4-man rush wasn't getting the job done. There was a heavy reliance on that. Whether it's linebackers, safeties, nickel, what have you. I'd like to see a little bit more variety.
And that's where you wish you had Kyler Gordon in there too, because I feel like he was great as far as blitzing, maybe the nickel or something like that. And he's not there. He's obviously going to be gone for at least 4 weeks. We'll see, but I think that's a great point right there.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it, and I definitely agree. Like Kyler's with his playing style, with his willingness to get physical, he's an ideal blitzing nickel. And then the last one is just stop playing so passive in coverage. I think it's more of a scheme thing than anything. And I tweeted out earlier, I think a couple days ago, your 2
great tweet.
Thank you. And you got 2 starting outside corners. It's Jalen Johnson and Tyreek Stevenson. That's who you have. Both of those guys, they thrive because they're bigger corners, they're more physical corners, they've got good length, and they're aggressive. They thrive near the line of scrimmage. They're better in press. And the Bears insisted on playing them in soft zones and playing them in off man. And when you do that, you're relying so much on short area quickness, which is a weakness for both of those guys. So
yeah,
just play to your strengths. I mean, I feel like that shouldn't be such a hot take or anything, but apparently, it's something they didn't utilize last week.
And the thing that pisses me off the most, like I saw your tweet and I was like, it was a great tweet, but honestly, it almost threw me over the edge. I'm like, exactly. Like I was kind of trying to figure out words to say because like the defense, especially on third down, that's one of my keys for this week is like, I think they did a very good job in that first half as far as just getting to those 3rd and longs, 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9. Sometimes I think it was 3rd and 13, but Jordan Love had all the time in the world. You rushed 4 most of the time, and they were able to, complete or to go ahead and get the 3rd down. Yeah. And that just kept drives alive and ultimately ended up in points almost every single drive. And so for me, it's like great job getting to 3rd and long, 3rd and 5, but you got to get off the field there. And that's where pressure, sending an extra man, making Baker make a mistake, because I think he's prone to that. We've seen it already. That's a reason why he's bouncing around the league. Jordan Love was great. They had a great game plan. The coaching was phenomenal. Obviously outclassed the Bears there. For me, it's like if they can get pressure, like you mentioned, especially on 3rd down, Baker's going to make a mistake, So that's one of my keys. I'll start on the defensive side. I love the coverage analysts part of it because, again, your tweet, I was going to bring it up either way. It's completely – you have guys that are physical that can press, with JJ and even Tariq Stevenson. So for me, you got to utilize that. And then also as far as just the defensive line, it's like you can only do so much because there's not as much talent that you would like there, and that will probably come next year in the coming years as Ryan Poles kind of set us up for that future to kind of get there. So for me, it's like, how are they going to get pressure? Sending more, absolutely, but you need to have Yannick Ngakoue. He got 1 sack last week, but it's like on those third down plays, you have to be able to get maybe a hit or some just added pressure. I think he had 2 pressures last week, and one of them was a sack, and it's just not enough. It's not enough. Again, it is week 1, but for me, as far as keys for the defense, there has to be some pressure. Otherwise, just like Jordan Love, who we don't know if he's a good quarterback yet, but he certainly looked that way last week because of all that time that the Packers offensive line gave him, and that's a testament to the offensive line there. As far as the offense, my keys there, man. I think you said it perfectly. Just do everything opposite. I think one of the biggest things for me as far as like almost coaching malpractice was just the game plan itself. Like Justin, his biggest asset is his legs. And I know a lot of people may be against that as far as just wanting a running quarterback to run. And they want a guy who's traditional, who can, beat you through the air. And Justin can do that at times. But as far as using his legs, they got to do it more. There was 2 QB designed runs. Those are safer than having him scramble for his life like he did last week on some of those plays, because you can kind of eliminate some variables with those QB design runs. And so for, heading into this week, it's like, man, if they don't have I would say like 7, I think 7 would be a sweet spot for me. Give me 7. And if it's going great, maybe throw a couple more in there, get to double digits. But if it's stopped and you did 7 times and they just have your number, Devin White, and they're reading it. Okay, then let's go to plan B. But as far as plan A, you have to use his legs and keep that defense at bay, because if he can get some chunk plays, 10 yards here, 7, 15, 20, whatever it might be, he can even get you 60. But then it's like the defense is going to play a little bit more relaxed. They're going to have to account for Justin. And so they're not going to send the house on some of these plays. And so for me, using his legs has to be at the top of the, my priority list. I don't know how you feel about that. I'm sure. How do you feel? Obviously, you like Justin and his legs, but do you want to see more emphasis on that?
To an extent, yeah. I think that I'm thinking a little bit more in terms of having him throw on the run and getting him on the move and then throwing the ball, but also design runs. I'm with you there. I think that to some extent it's, you have to take advantage of that. And obviously his athleticism makes him one of the best running quarterbacks. Almost said running backs on accident. Packers Twitter would have had a field day with that.
Man,
so glad I didn't. But Yeah, no, and so I agree with you. I think that you got to utilize Fields' legs to some extent.
Yeah.
In an ideal world, you don't have maybe your quarterback running like 10, 15 times a game, but at the same time, you have that athleticism. Might as well use it. That's my viewpoint of it. And just real quick, I saw a comment saying, not sure you can play man against Evans and Godwin.
Yeah.
I think that makes sense. I understand that sentiment. I think that it would have made more sense to play like closer man against Jaden Reed and Romeo Dobbs, which, like, dude, why would you not?
I know, man.
Confidence in your corners, but I mean, I think that's fair. I would like to see more man than what they showed in week 1. But
Right.
at the, more press man, I should say. But at the same time, maybe show some press looks and then drop back into zone. I think that condensing those spaces, I think that's probably going to be to the best of your abilities. And yeah, sure, Evans and Godwin, they're not the most like twitchy guys, but they're also just intelligent. They know how to get open, even though they're not like 4.25 athletes or something. They're crafty. They're veterans. They know how to get open. They know how to eat up zone coverage. So I think in the more condensed space that you have there, the better.
Absolutely. And again, I guess I'll finish. One other key is the offensive line. We have a comment here from Michael Mack on Facebook. He goes, awful offensive line, bad play calling. They don't throw past 5 yards. I want to go ahead and obviously the first part, awful offensive line, that's something that's got to change. Justin cannot be running for his life. Obviously, there was an amazing video by the QB school. I think you've watched it, Jake. I think everyone, if you haven't, go watch it, but it's on YouTube. He's a great account as far as just learning football and the quarterback play itself. But the offensive line wasn't great. He pointed out there, but Fields also missed some. He was way too quick on some of his reads. He was skipping over. He had some shots down the field that he did not take, which he's a big game hunter, or at least he was. And so it's like, was he coached out of that? I don't know. But for me, another key is Fields has to revert back to taking some deep shots. He said in his presser this week, hey, I missed some shots. I didn't give DJ. He said Claypool as well, which I thought was noteworthy that, he did not give those guys enough opportunities. And so for me, it's like, you got to do that. And the offensive line has to do their part where they can give him more than, a second and a half. Give him the 2.5, 3 that, Jordan Love got. Maybe get him on the run a little bit more. Change the just the launch points. You have to do that. And then maybe you have a chance against, Tampa Bay. I want to go over a couple things just heading into this game. It looks like as far as the injury report, we have Robert Tonyan. He is going to be back. So that 12 personnel is likely going to be there, which was a surprise last week. And I think that injury on Saturday before the game played I think it changed a lot, more than we probably know. And so right now it's just as far as the injury report, it's Bears cornerback Josh Blackwell. He's the only player with an injury designation for Sunday's game against the Bucs. He's doubtful with a hamstring injury. Linebacker Dylan Cole, who's been dealing with, some issues in the week, he's actually good to go. So only one player. So you are healthy. Once again, obviously missing Tevin and Kyler. But at that point, that's all you can do there. Another thing here is Bears defensive coordinator Alan Williams. It was today, September 15th, we had Adam Schefter. He reported that Alan Williams will miss Sunday's game at Tampa due to personal reasons. So, Jacob, I have a question for you. Matt Eberflus is going to be the fill-in as the DC. Back to his Indy days where they had a top 10 defense almost every single year. What do you think? Obviously, hope everything's okay with Allen and his family, but are you kind of intrigued? Because I kind of feel that way as far as what is Flus going to do, if maybe anything, but I believe there's going to be a difference as far as how he calls the game. And so what do you think about that? Anything you think we might see maybe a little different, maybe a couple wrinkles from Flus?
Yeah. So, and I'm very curious to see what the defense is going to look like with Eberflus calling the shots. I mean, I wish it was under different circumstances. I don't know what's going on with Alan Williams, but hope everything's okay there. I do think that, after watching week 1, you have to realize, okay, we're playing bend, don't break defense, and we're relying on a 4-man rush. But the fact of the matter is, we can't get there. We can't get to the quarterback. We're playing too passive. We're not talented enough, which, it sucks to say, but I don't think it's a finished product to the point where you can play this scheme as well as, some teams, especially those mid-2000s Bears, have played it in the past. So I think you've got to add a few more wrinkles. You got to get creative in how you rush the passer, get creative in the coverage looks you have. I think in an ideal situation, I do think this defense could work, this scheme. And I do think that, say whatever you want about the fact that it's a 2000s defense, and that's true. But I think there are enough retools to this scheme that I think it could work. I just think that the Bears currently don't have the personnel to pull it off entirely. So I'd like to see Eberflus get a little bit creative. And, like I mentioned, with the blitzes, exotic rush looks, different coverage packages, stuff like that.
Yeah. I love it, man. I'm very intrigued with Flus and what he can do. Just because I remember in Indy, he was obviously very good, top 10, and that was before they had Buckner. Like, obviously having him, game changer, but that he was still top 10 in defense for Indy without that piece right there. So for me, it's like very, very intriguing. I look forward to it. Obviously, hopefully everything is okay with Allen. You hate to see that. But again, as far as the football perspective and as a fan analyst, we're like, okay, this is interesting. So I'm excited to see kind of what transpires on Sunday. We have question here. Luke Getzy and said Eberflus and Poles decide who's active or inactive on Sunday. Why is Poles involved in that decision? Shouldn't it be Eberflus and Getzy deciding that? Jacob, what are your thoughts on that, man? It's a good question.
That is a good question. I mean, I'm honestly, I'm with you there. I think that if Getsy's calling the shots on offense, he should have a say in who he's working with. But that's just me. I think that Poles, obviously, he's scouted these guys. He knows what they're capable of. So I don't think it's the end of the world that he has some sort of say, because he's a good evaluator. I believe that in the grand scheme of things, in terms of identifying talent. Now, the allocation of resources to talent, I mean, that remains to be seen. But I do think that the actual talent evaluation he's good at. So I don't think it's the end of the world by any means that Poles is involved. But I mean, yeah, I feel like Getzy and then, even Alan Williams, they should get together, the four of them, and discuss that. But definitely something to be curious about. I'm wondering, why isn't Getzy involved? Why hasn't Williams been involved? But I'm a bit confused by it. So I'm just curious to see if we'll get any clarity as the season goes on. I took like 2 days off Twitter. I have family in, so it wasn't like, I planned it. It kind of came at like almost the perfect time, because it's been very, it's been interesting, crazy, kind of depressing, I've heard, because first day back today. But we have, let's see here, the play call or deciding who plays is very interesting, because I like you said, Ryan Poles, I do trust him. But as far as Eberflus goes, and I don't know, I think at the end of the day that it really shouldn't matter. But with where everything is going right now and a dumpster fire of last week, it's like everything is being questioned at this point. So it's kind of fair game. I don't know. I would like to I wish we had an idea of like, as far as around the league, is this a normal thing? How do other teams do it? It's something we can look into, but at the end of the day, it really should not matter, but the fact is everything kind of matters when it's under a microscope after such a disappointing week, and opening, game against Green Bay. So I have some over and unders here, Jacob, that we're going to go through before we kind of give our predictions, man. Obviously we kind of went over the week 2, over under, as it's set at 41 points. Do you have what are your thoughts on that? Over, under, what are you taking there? So I'm going slightly over. Okay. Not as many points as Josh had, but I do think that we go over. Just clarifying. Did you say 41? Was it?
It was. Yeah, it's set at 41. Bears Bucs week 2,
which is pretty low.
It is.
I'll take the over on that by a little bit.
Okay. I think I'm going to do as well, just because I do think it's going to be – I think there'll be some fun plays. Hopefully, the Bears will contribute in that category. We'll see. And then, of course, we spoke on it earlier. They're listed as 2.5-point underdogs for week 2. The Bears have plus 120 odds to winning Tampa. The Bucs, on the other hand, have minus 145. So there's some quarterback props I want to get to here as well. We have so Fields went 24 for 37 last week. A lot of garbage time. That kind of has to be thrown in there. He had 216 passing yards, a touchdown, and, of course, that interception. So the odds makers actually have Justin having a worse day through the air against the Bucs, which is interesting. So Justin Fields, his over-under is set at 170.5. Jacob, what are you taking here?
That's tough. I'm gonna go a little bit. I'm gonna go over. I do think that. No, I don't know if 200 is what he'll hit, but I do think that, like when you consider 180, 190, I think that's definitely possible. Especially given the more run-heavy nature of this Bears offense at its core, and the fact that I don't think it's going to be as much of a, I don't think it's going to be a blowout to the point where you're just throwing it the ball in garbage time. So yeah, I'm going to go over on that, but that's just me though.
Yeah, I mean, so Tampa's defense is ranked middle of the pack. Like right now, they're at 17th in the league. I think they're just pretty good at everything, stopping the run, passing. And this is just going off of week 1 as far as PFF goes. So a lot can happen. 8 weeks down the road, we can be looking at a bottom 10 defense for Tampa. We don't know, or top 10. So for me, it's tough because like Justin Fields, 170.5 just seems so low in 2023. It's frustrating, but it is Justin, who has not been proven as a prolific passer. And that's, fair to say. For me, I'm going to go over as well. I would love to see him go over 200 yards in back-to-back games. I don't really see it happening. But if there's any time to do it, it's going to be this week because he needs to quiet a lot of people. I think the entire offense as a whole has to kind of perform a lot better. Obviously, they can do just a little bit different. And I think that's going to be a huge improvement because last week was tough. And I think another thing for them is finishing drives. If they've early on in that game finished with 7 instead of 3, I think this game is completely different. I think the energy on the sidelines, I think the team has more confidence. Justin is a guy who, once he kind of gets going, once that confidence there, I think we kind of see him perform at a better level. And I think that goes for probably every quarterback, but we'd love to see him get in the rhythm there, not just on screenplays. So I'm going to go over as well. I don't think he gets 200, but I'd love to see it, Baker Mayfield, over under passing yards. He's at 225.5.
Oh, see, I was thinking, I was thinking somewhere in that 220, 230 range. So that's,
oh, wow.
That's a tough one. I'm going to go lower just by a little bit. I do think that Baker's going to in terms of passing yards. I think Baker's going to have more passing yards than Justin Fields. And I think that's just because of the offense you're looking at here, but yeah, I'll go a little bit under. Obviously, I'd love to be right on that. And if Baker ends up throwing for like 350 yards, then, whatever, I'll, send a welfare check to my home. But yeah, I'm going a little bit under, but I think he tops 100 though.
Yeah, me too. I think I'm going to go under as well. I like the 215, 210. I could see him around that, and I think that's okay. Now, I want to move to the receivers. We have DJ Moore, who should be a focal point this week. I mean, God forbid. I mean, we have to see him more involved, and I believe that's going to happen, but it's the Bears, and who really knows? Like, they can disappoint us in so many different ways. So for me, it's like, Justin, you got to give him at least 8 to 12 targets. That's how I feel, just because I think he's that much of a game changer. You can throw a slant his way, and he could take it 50. But if you don't give him the targets, we're never going to know. He's not going to be able to break that tackle, make that move, if you're not giving him the ball in open space. So he is set at receiving yards 45.5. That seems low too, but what are you thinking over under?
So 45.5. I'm thinking over.
Okay. It better be.
Yeah, it better be. I don't know why, but there's like a specific stat line that's like in my head right now.
Okay. And what is it?
So 7 targets, 4 catches, 54 yards and a touchdown.
That's improvement.
Yeah, that's a step in the right direction.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like that's given around where we've said,
Okay.
Fields is going to produce and factoring in everyone else who's going to be throwing the ball. I think that's fair.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'd love for it to be even more. I feel like he's certainly capable of having more receiving yards, more receptions, and he has in the past, absolutely. And I think those games will come. But for the time being, with such a low line and that the lack of DJ Moore fresh in Chicago's mind, I do think they'll utilize him a bit more against Tampa, which it's not a high bar, but I think they do.
So one of my bold predictions this week, I just wrote an article, it was on sportsmarket.com that we just posted. It's my bold predictions. Yeah. So for me, one of them was DJ Moore, because I believe that they are going to utilize him to the max this week. I really think they heard, the uproar as far as just, how do you trade a first round pick and just only get 2 targets for that guy that you traded for, especially as dynamic as DJ Moore. And it has to be unsettling. They have to be pissed. And Justin, of course, did miss him a couple times. So that has to get better. He has to get to his reads. He has to make the correct throws. He has to get DJ involved. So for me, one of my bold predictions, it kind of does seem maybe too bold, is I think he tops 100 plus receiving yards, or I'm sorry, total yards. So as far as just jet sweeps, maybe, and just getting him the ball, force feeding him. So if he gets 8 to 12 targets, I think that's possible. Yeah. Again, Mooney had a great week last week. He led the team in receiving. Love that bounce back. But for me, it's like, I got to see this connection that we heard about all summer, and starting, getting 100 plus yards as either receiver or, rushing seems like a lot. It is probably not going to happen. I'll be so happy with like just 70, but for me, got to be bold. It's part of the, the bit. I'm going to go over. So I'm going to go over 45 and a half. For me, I don't think he gets a touchdown. I think they utilize him to get to that red zone and maybe obviously try to get a couple targets there. But I think maybe Kmet, might even be Mooney. There's going to be a lot of, especially if he gets going DJ, I think they're going to try to stop him, especially when you get to that, 10, 15-yard line. So for me, I don't think he gets a touchdown, but I'm going to say about 70 yards is what I'm expecting. And I don't think that's much to ask for a guy that is a true number one. And then Justin supposedly has that chemistry. So bounce back from last week, maybe throwing a couple more yards, but I would go over. Now, Chase Claypool. I want to end it here and we'll get to our predictions. Okay. Obviously, not a great outing, but there's been talk about maybe benching him. Whatever. For me, I'm kind of passionate on this, on my stance. I want to what are your thoughts on, one, should he be active Sunday? And 2, what do you expect from Claypool heading into week 2?
So I'd still keep him active. Just judging off of what we saw from him in week 1, I'd naturally try some more looks. I'd try some more looks for other receivers, try to see what Equinemi St. Brown can do. I'd activate him. I try to see what Tyler Scott can do in some cases. Very different skill set from Claypool, but just see what you have there. So I'd still play Claypool. I think someone naturally with that size and speed is someone worth playing, at least for right now. And I love nothing more than for him to prove me wrong. I think that there's so much raw physical talent there, but I'm confused. The mentality.
That's good word.
Yeah. The mentality hasn't been there to this point where I don't know if he wants to get better, which is a shame because I think that, we saw early on in his Steelers career, the ceiling with him is super high. So I'd give him some more. I'd give him a little bit of leeway, but I'm also tightening the leash. I'm significantly tightening the leash. Okay. So if there's another performance along the lines of what we saw in week 1, then I'd consider, sending him to the bench. But
we have a comment here that says Claypool came here to catch touchdowns and be a physical wide receiver. I kind of understand his frustration, but he has to be a team player. That was from Tareen. And I agree to a point. But Flus said that in practice, he's been executing these blocks. There's a reason they threw him on the field here, or put him on the field for these, these design plays, and it's because he's executed in practice. So for me, it's about technique. It's about, I think he has the willingness to block. I'd be shocked if he didn't. Like he's a team player. He should be. For me, it's like we look back at his rookie year and it's like, yeah, it was great. There's a lot of flashes. I think a lot of Bear fans were saying, why did we, not get him instead of Kmet? It was talked about. That's how good he was. Yeah. And I think Bears fans obviously tend to do that a lot. There's been that Jalen Carter talk, which that sucks. Honestly, that's tough there's a reason a lot of teams passed on him. It wasn't just the Bears, but again, if his character and everything improves, the talent is there. And we're seeing in Philly right now, and it's gonna be a tough pill to swallow. But at the same time, Darnell Wright had a pretty good first week. Wasn't too, some rookie or rocky snaps as a rookie. That's gonna happen, but overall, he wasn't terrible. It was more so Braxton Jones that I was worried about, or that was just popping up on the screen. That wasn't good. So for me, for Chase Claypool, I am frustrated at his performance in week 1. But at the same time, Justin, he said himself, he has to get Claypool more shots. You have to give him the ball, but Claypool has to earn that too. And that starts with the blocking. That starts with executing. As far as a guy who's 5'8", blowing up a screen, almost taking Mooney's head off, you cannot do that. It cannot happen. And so I see why that, compilation of plays is, popping around, or was going around early in the week. I'm sure it's still, getting some heat. And Kyle Brandt even talked about it, on Good Morning Football. He didn't mention his name, but he's like, he can't be, loafing around like that. You can't be going through the motions like he did. And the energy as a whole will, not even just Claypool, he thought it'd be more. Bears versus Packers week 1, and the team was just, you could see that they were, distant and the emotion was lacking. So for me, I don't think you bench him. I think that's way too soon. However, if he has a repeat performance and it's as bad as week 1, then you can jump the gun to perhaps sending a message, and going there. But the fact is, if you have to go that route and you gave up that pick that you did, even though you didn't know it was number 32, that's going to be tough. There's, as far as the evaluation, process and everything, it's got to be looked into with polls and the staff, because man, that would be a huge, if he can't even contribute, that's a whole different story. If he's wide receiver 3, that's fine. It is what it is. You gave up, you didn't know the pick, but if he's off the team, that'd be insane to fathom, and it'd be such a Bears thing to happen. So we have Bryson here saying Bears Twitter has been rough. Yeah, it has. Like I said, I'm glad I kind of took some time off over there, but I'm hoping that we kind of bounce back. So we'll go ahead and get to our predictions here. Curious to kind of see how you feel, Jacob, just heading into this game against the Bucs. Obviously, the Bears have a lot that they can fix. Is it going to be enough? But what do you think? What is your score predictions? Give us your breakdown. What's going to happen Sunday?
So I feel like naturally, after such a big blowout loss, you're going to have to make some changes, and you're going to have to adjust the way you attack a game. And I think that'll show up to some extent with the Bears. I think it'll be a much closer game against Tampa Bay than what it was against the Packers. I do have the Bears losing. I have it 23-20. So I have it in a close game. What I have right now is Fields throws a touchdown, rushes for a touchdown, and throws a pick.
Okay, so 2 total, 1 pick.
Yeah.
But is it a bounce back game for him? Is the talk of the town going to be, are we moving on from Justin, or is it like, okay, hey, he showed improvement. This is what we expected. Let's see if he can keep building on this. What is the headline going to be on Monday morning?
So I think it's going to be a step in the right direction for Justin. I truly do. And okay, I think that with just someone who's as talented as he is, with the work ethic that he has, I feel like after a game like that, there's got to be a little bit of fire underneath him. And I don't doubt that that's going to be the case. I do think that, maybe a lack of a pass rush is going to hurt the Bears. And I have it as not a super high scoring game. I think Tampa's going to run the ball a good amount too and take advantage of that, wind down the clock. But, I do think that both offensive drives for both teams are going to be fairly efficient. They're just going to take a long time. So 23-20 is what I have for the Bucs winning that game. I think the headline is Fields plays better Obviously, he doesn't set the world on fire. He's not like, oh my God, this guy's elite or anything. But it's like, all right, it's a step in the right direction. He looks better than what we saw from him in week 1. So it's just continuing to, add on momentum and build upon some of those weaknesses.
We have a comment here that would be 12 straight losses as well heading into KC. That would probably be 13. Then you can probably chalk that one up at Arrowhead.
God.
That's tough. Again, before I give my prediction, if you've enjoyed the show, you like the content, go ahead and leave a like. You can check my stuff out at sportsmockery.com. Check out Jacob at Windy City Gridiron. I think you have a podcast now, kind of, Jacob, or you do spaces?
Yeah, so I'm doing I do spaces just every once in a while. Usually just whenever I go out for a walk. I just get my phone out and I'm like, all right, I'm just gonna take some questions. Ficky's in here. There you go.
Ficky. Ficky, again, we'll get to my prediction, but he's actually getting a tattoo in Dallas. I think today's his last day. He's finishing up his sleeve. It's been like 8 hours, so we'll hear from him after the game. But he just commented here for our Apple, Spotify users. He said, "Let's go Bears, Ficky. Ficky, if you're in here, man, give us your prediction. I'll read it out loud before we end the show." But shout out to him. I'm excited to kind of see what his sleeve finally looks like. Again, if you like the content, leave a like. It does help the channel grow. Sub if you want to be here for the rest of the season. Hopefully it's going to be a fun one. My prediction is going to be an interesting one because I had a lot of confidence heading into week 1. I actually picked the Bears to win. Jacob, I think you did as well. You had the Bears winning? I can't remember.
I think it was close. I'm going to pull it up. I'm going to pull it up.
Yeah, you pull it up. You get it up. I think you were. So for me, my prediction this week is I do believe the Bears bounce back, and I think it's enough for them to beat Tampa, mainly because I think Baker may struggle. He's kind of up and down as far as a roller coaster goes. I'm going to pick against Baker here. I think the Bears will struggle at times, but I think they are going to flip the script. I think they're going to throw out what they did in week 1. I think they just have to, from a coaching standpoint, from a viewpoint, the team's morale, they just have to do something different offensively. So running fields, I think that's going to happen. I believe the Bears are going to be able to win this one 24-21. That's my gut. I think 24 might even be high. I believe it might be even low scoring, but 24-21 is my pick. I think Justin Fields does have a bounce back game. He doesn't have, bad performances, back to back. Typically he does kind of bounce back. We've seen it here, 3 years now, or almost 3 years. And even in college, he just doesn't have bad games in a back-to-back scenario. Ficky likes to mention that, and I think it's true here too. So that's my guess. I could be totally wrong. I mean, it is the Bears we're talking about here. Let's see here. Jacob, did you find out what your prediction was?
I did. I took the Bears -2, and then,
okay.
I had the Bears winning.
Look at us now.
Yeah.
Hey, first of all, there's a reason I didn't talk a lot of shit, all off season. It's because of that scenario. I learned my lessons from 2019, but I know a lot of people who had to almost mute people because the Packers fans, rightfully so, were lighting up everyone. Did you kind of get some of that heat too, or?
Yeah. I got I did a space the night of that game, a couple hours after. I did my post game write up, and then I hopped on Spaces. And there are these two Packers trolls who have been in my mentions for months. I swear they have tweet notifications on for me.
Is it the Giannis guy or no?
It's the troll. The Giannis dude.
Oh man,
I don't remember exactly what
he must feel so vindicated.
Yeah.
After he was commenting at every post of mine and so many others for a month or 2 months straight.
Yeah. And then it finally worked out for him. So now he's, letting everyone hear about it. And then, that and the Jair Alexander, the fake account. I don't know if you've seen that. Is Jair
yeah.
2 R's.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
He hopped in my space and it was something. He came in with this. He was doing
You let him talk?
Yeah, I let him talk.
Yeah.
I'm talking shit, whatever. And I'm he was doing this high pitched voice or whatever, and then he just broke and he started laughing, and then he left, and then I never heard from him again. There you go. Yeah, those are the two guys. Yeah, trolled by Queipo. Yeah. And then
Jar Real Alexander. Yeah. First of all, I can't stand Alexander. That corner. He's good. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
He's good. He's paid for a reason. But God, I hope to God when do we play the Bears again or the Packers? Week 18?
I think
or week 16?
I think.
Anyways, I hope it's I hope it's a meaningful game and we torch him multiple times. Like, God, I would love that. I just don't like him, man. I'm sure he's a great human being, but as far as the rivalry, as far as Bears, Packers, I cannot stand him because he talks shit after the game. He's just like, yeah, what do you expect is going to happen? As far as like locking up DJ Moore, or just getting 2 targets, it's frustrating.
Yeah.
So for me, I'm picking the Bears. Looks like Justin has his prediction here. He has the same thing. So he said 24-21 Bears, bounce back game for the offense. And then he says, Dave is spot on. He says, wow, Dave, you took my prediction. Shout out to Vicky again. But yeah, that's how I'm feeling, man. I wanted to go a little higher but I have no faith right now that we're going to score more than 24 doesn't seem like a lot, but
yeah.
I think 24 might be even more than we can, I don't know, get as far as against Tampa, who's a tough defense. We'll see. We have one last thing. That guy 44. Any chance the Bears silently relieved Alan Williams? I don't think so. I don't think they would cover it like this.
Yeah. It doesn't line up with what some of the the way that the McCaskies have done things. I mean, they haven't fired a head coach mid-season. I don't think ever. If they have, it was like decades ago.
Yeah.
But that's just not the way they do things, and I feel like if they let go of Allen, then I feel like it'd be public news by now. I feel like this is something.
Yeah, they wouldn't cover it up in a personal manner. Which who knows what's going on? We hope everything's all right with him. Yeah. But Vicky said week 17 at the Packers. You got it. So I mean, hopefully that's a meaningful game for the division. We'll see. I mean, Minnesota's 0-2. Hopefully the Lions lose as well, and the Packers, and we'll be all tied out 1-1. As far as heading to week 3, we'll see. But Jacob, again, thank you for hopping on, man. We appreciate it. Friend of the pod. Do you have anything you want to say before we kind of head out of here, man?
Yeah, no, I'm just going to say if the Bears do lose, we might be getting a mock draft. We might be getting a mock draft. And I swear when I say that, that's not me being like, oh, the season's over, whatever. I just like the draft. And if it's an 0-2 start, I couldn't help but be pessimistic about the rest of the season and how that outcome turns out. But I want to show people. I like showing people draft prospects. Sue me,
dude. If we go 0-2, you're going to be in full draft season almost which is going to be fun because you are the best in the business as far as Bears Twitter. No one does it better at covering the draft than Jacob Infante. You can follow him on. You can see it on the screen here. Follow him on Twitter for our Apple, Spotify listeners at Jacob Infante 24. Again, he's amazing. Again, thank you for coming on, man. I know it was last minute. Yeah. It was fun. Hopefully, next time you come on here, we're talking a little bit more in a positive tone. Yeah. But if you enjoyed the content, enjoyed the stream, go ahead and leave a like again, sub to the channel. Rate the pod on Apple, Spotify. We appreciate it, and we will recap it Sunday evening, and Vicky will be back hopping on the show. So until then, we'll see you next time.